Hello everyone! In this video, we are going to further discuss about the topics of CBI, specifically strategies for content instructors, current trends in CBI, and future trends in CBI. First stop are the strategies for content instructors. The first strategy is content knowledge, in which teachers must master their subject matter. This is often said to be given, but sometimes this is forgotten, and thus it will be hard to teach both the content and the language. If this strategy is used daily, there would be a clear sense of conceptual terrain and emphasis on the subject matter. Moving on to understanding of language acquisition. All teachers in content-based programs will benefit from an understanding of the processes involved in second language acquisition. Selecting and sequencing appropriate learning experiences will be facilitated if teachers understand how language develops in instructed settings. Because CBI is quite complex in language teaching, this will be a good strategy to follow, and this will result to the balance between language and content and the improvement of the ability of teachers to serve diverse students in their classrooms. Next is understanding of student assessment. It will be helpful for teachers to be familiar with the range of assessment options and the contexts in which they are most likely to provide answers regarding student progress. These options may also need to integrate language and content assessments, as well as allow learning to be measured independently. In other words, this strategy allows teachers to see if their teaching has been effective and to ensure students learn what they need to know in order to meet the course's learning objectives. Following is the knowledge of materials development and selection. These are the variety of instructional materials, the print and non-print resources. Criteria for selecting and developing materials including accessibility of language, text organization that facilitates comprehension, like headings and subheadings, the availability of non-linguistic that supports the meaning, like illustrations, graphs, diagrams, and etc., and degree of cultural knowledge required for comprehension. Lastly is the content and language pedagogy. These are composed of class exercises, creative examples, and careful explanations that aims to help instructors learn their students' abilities. Pedagogical content knowledge requires an understanding of where students are coming from in reference to the subject being taught. That's because, in order to teach material well, teachers have to know what the students bring to the class as far as prior conceptions, feelings, and strategies. While language pedagogy is promoting language growth that should be done by content-based teachers, even those who work in settings where content and not language is a primary program goal. Language learning can be planned as part of every content lesson, and teachers can use strategies drawn from language pedagogy to help students gain language skills. In fact, in doing so, they will further the goals of content instruction, since the better students know the language, the more easily they can learn content through it. Since CBI is a learner-centered approach, then this strategy is essential for teachers.
CBI has emerged as one of the primary approaches used in teaching second or foreign languages. Geographically, it has spread to virtually all parts of the world. It has also been implemented at all educational levels, from elementary school instruction to adult continuing education, and from college preparatory courses to postgraduate educational contexts. This is Leonela Imota from Group 3, and I will be the one to present to you the current trends in CBI. But before anything else, let's first unlock the key terms, trends, and CBI. What is a trend?
Content. Within the field of language acquisition, the term content is used to describe any subject matter besides languages. This might be, for example, math, history, or science. In the context of this course, we are using the term content-based instruction, CBI, to describe classroom-based instruction where the content is taught in a language that the students are still in the process of learning. In our case, this is EFL. This American English e-teacher course was built with the assumption that most participants would teach CBI courses in which the language learning objectives were equally important as the content learning objectives. This is certainly not the case in all CBI courses. In fact, the term CBI has been used in some contexts to refer to classes whose primary goal was to teach the students a new language. Despite this, we use the term CBI in this course in the broader sense, described above. There are other CBI programs where the content learning objectives are the primary focus. This is true of many university classes where content experts teach about their area of expertise in EFL. A more specific term to refer to this kind of program is the term English Medium Instruction, or EMI. Another common term for referring to CBI programs is the term CLIL, or Content and Language Integrated Learning. CLIL is the term that is used more often in Europe. As we are defining CBI in this course, CLIL and CBI refer to the same thing.
In recent years, content-based instruction has become increasingly popular as a means of developing linguistic ability. It has strong connections to project work, task-based learning, and a holistic approach to language instruction, and has become particularly popular within the state, school, secondary education sector. To continue, this time we will focus on the evolving architecture of content-based instruction that talks about the trends in CBI today by Donna M. Brenton and Margaret Ann Snow. According to them, surveying the landscape of CBI today, some 30 plus years after the appearance of Mohan's language and content, we cannot help but be struck with a variety of new and or hybrid models of CBI. As we have indicated in the title of this chapter, the architecture of CBI continues to flex or evolve as new contexts emerge where the application of CBI is relevant. This lack of a prescribed form, in fact, can be considered one of the CBI's most obvious strengths as well as one of the primary reasons for the enduring nature of the model. Figure 1.3 provides an updated visual representation or map of the most documented variants of CBI on the language teaching scene today. So this is the updated map of CBI. As we can see, the three prototype models of theme-based, sheltered, and adjunct instruction are still very much present on the scene. However, for all three prototypes, we see offshoots of the original models indicating ways in which CBI has evolved to accommodate specific student populations, teaching settings, and local resources or logistics. The first of these accommodations, sustained content language teaching, was briefly mentioned. Sustained content courses taught by a language instructor are a form of theme-based instruction. And these are the advantages of sustained content language teaching over more traditional theme-based instruction. First, topics are stretched over a whole term or an entire school year, thus avoiding the pitfalls of the theme-based potpourri approach, where content is presented in bits and pieces with no obvious connections in terms of content or language selection. Second, the use of sustained content simulates the conditions and demands of the subject matter classroom. And next, learners engage with the content more deeply, in the process acquiring advanced academic vocabulary and language skills. Fourth, or the last one, there is a dual focus on content, including critical thinking, cognitive and cognitive strategies and study skills, and language development, including the four skills: grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. Moreover, Brinton provides an example of an elective literature course taught to advanced second language students at the tertiary level. This example of SCLT, or Sustained Content Language Teaching, focused on the City of Angels, revolved around the single extended theme of the City of Los Angeles. Opting to depart from the traditional format for literature courses in which students read excerpts from great works of literature, Brinton instead organized the course around works dealing with life and urban issues in Los Angeles. Students read essays, autobiographies, poems, short stories, and a novel, and in all of these, the city took on a central role and exerted its unique influence on character and plot. Integral to the course were activities that acquainted students with literary devices, for example, plot setting and character development. However, equally important were activities, for example, guided discussions, response journals, stylistic analysis of word choice, that use the content to enhance students' language and critical thinking skills. And next is the content and language integrated learning. It is a dual language model that involves the delivery of certain subject matter courses in the student's second language or additional language, and that represents a response to the multilingual needs and goals of global economies. With its goal of creating global citizens, CLIL lends itself to settings, for example, the European Union, where a language other than the student's home language serves as a lingua franca or language of wider communication. Since its beginnings, CLIL has spread rapidly throughout Europe and elsewhere worldwide. CLIL is largely driven by a language policy that embraces the development of multilingual or multicultural individuals who can function in today's global society. Moreover, students' exposure to second language subject matter instruction is systematically phased in over time, with the number of hours of second language content instruction increasing with grade level. Sheltered instruction, on the other hand, is typically driven by pressing educational needs in settings such as the US, where large numbers of school-aged children speak home languages other than the language of school and may enter the school system at any time during the academic year. Its end goal is to transition students from the sheltered to the mainstream classroom. So that's it for this trend. Next is the English medium instruction, one of the cousins of content-based teaching. It is often referred to as the tertiary education variant of CLIL. EMI refers to content instruction delivered in the student's second language. Central to the appeal of EMI are the dual aims of creating multilingual citizens and internationalizing tertiary institutions, that is, to appeal to international students for whom EMI courses are an enrollment incentive and thus a financial boon to the institution. EMI course offerings have multiplied exponentially in recent years, not only in Europe but also in many other parts of the globe, with more than 60% of all postgraduate courses in Europe currently being offered through EMI. That being said, the implementation of EMI differs widely from country to country as well as from institution to institution. In particular, this variation pertains to the degree to which language support or an intentional focus on language skills is present. On the other end of the spectrum, Brinton describes language-enhanced, also known as language-sensitive, English medium courses in which the content and language goals are intentionally aligned and where there is an explicit focus on developing language skills as well as increasing content knowledge, which is very important for content instructors. Attention to language and attention to content, and the power imbalance between language and content instructors. As Brinton, Snow, and West note, there are numerous issues that impact the successful implementation of CBI. These include, but are not limited to, administrative issues, where the impetus for implementing CBI comes from and who carries responsibility for the program's implementation, and program design issues. For example, whether the primary objective is to teach language or to teach content, and how far-reaching the plan changes are, it's part of the problem. Then student issues, for example, students' second language proficiency level, their prior educational background, and their needs and interests. And staffing issues, for example, whether instructors have the necessary linguistic proficiency and background in CBI and whether they are willing to take on new rules in their teaching. And finally, program evaluation issues, for example, student achievement and the quality of the curriculum and materials. And with respect to the first of these issues, SK notes that CBI tends to come down hard on the side of fluency, thus often paying inadequate attention to form. This is echoed in research conducted by Brinton and Holton, who note that language instructors often spend more classroom time reviewing content than focusing on language. They term this phenomenon content envy. Next, as pertains to achieving a balance of language and content in the integrated classroom, research yields the following findings. Davison, in a study of subject English as a content course, notes that the definition of what is language and what is content can shift according to disciplinary community, that is, that the very notions of language and content are subject to interpretation. And a final area that impacts the successful implementation of CBI models is the perennial issue in CBI of power relations between content and language teachers. A classic in its own right, Goldson, Campbell, and Clark Cummings research highlighted the subservient position that that many language instructors take to content instructors in adjunct contexts. Accordingly, the authors dubbed the phenomenon they observe the flight attendant syndrome. So there are a lot of researches that digs in this kind of issue, this type of issue. And lastly, these relationships were shown to negatively impact teachers' efforts to balance language and content in their courses. They conclude with a call to faculty from both disciplines for interprofessionality. Yes, at this point, it is appropriate to ponder the future of CBI. And This would be my conclusions. The conclusions that talks about the evolution, the evolving architecture of content-based instruction. So, which is still a vibrant force in the field of SFL teaching. Snow 2014 ventures the following thoughts on the issue. The teaching of language through content is not so much a method as a reorientation to what is meant by content and language teaching. The literature offers strong theoretical support for content-based approaches and abundant examples of successful programs in SFL settings. As it enters its fifth decade, we share Rick's positive outlook that content-based language teaching is likely to continue to flourish, particularly in contexts where learners' main opportunity for developing advanced second language proficiency is a school or post-secondary context and where they need to develop academic second language ability. So once again, CBI has evolved to accommodate specific student populations, teaching settings, and local resources or logistics. So, we are, however, less interested in hard and fast boundaries than offering a helpful schema that delineates similar and contrasting features as a way of demonstrating the rich array of CBI possibilities. So in this chapter, the evolving architecture of content-based instruction by Brinton and Snow, they attempted the perhaps hardy task of classifying the various approaches to CBI that have evolved. So classification is tricky business, especially given that they readily admit that the models are constantly evolving. So
before I start, can we just all agree that almost everything is gradually changing? From our lifestyle, down to people teleworking, to us, students doing online classes, and for children staying at home instead of playing outdoors? Point is, change is inevitable, so does learning. Let's refresh. CBI, or content-based instruction, is? Okay, we've learned in our previous slides that CBI is an approach to language learning that focuses not on the language itself, but rather on what is being taught through the language. That is, the language becomes the medium through which something new is learned. CBI has not only been shown to an effective approach for developing language proficiency, it also shows potential for advancing a critical perspectives approach that fosters translingual and transcultural competence. What can be the future trends in CBI? Now, it's difficult to say that what can be the future trends of CBI because there are a lot of things we need to consider before we finally say that this can be a part of a future trend. Technology plays a big role in the future of CBI, nonetheless. According to my research, researchers conceptualize 3 elements of learning goals in CBI curricula. First is learning of language and content. Second is gaining skills and knowledge for critical analysis. Third is fostering a critical disposition in learner. These 3 elements are interlocked in actual teaching. It is important to clearly state them as independent goals because the instruments used to assess each component will be designed separately. So those researchers strongly believe that critical skills and dispositions are fundamental to develop of such competence integral to humanity. Nothing more, nothing less. And it is also important to design long-term curricula according to these goals. So going back, compared to the mastery of the subject matters of language and content, achieving the goals of criticality, skills, knowledge, and disposition requires an extensive time commitment. So in addition to designing a long-term curricular vision, instructional materials aimed specifically at these 3 goals must be developed. Now, we have, of course, the challenges of implementing. The first is it may conflict or prove incompatible with institutional environments that prioritize efficiency and practicality. So, for example, business and academic language courses especially have tended to focus on the mastery of practical skills required in given situations. It has a strong emphasis on immediate practical needs. However, if the aim is to educate individuals who can reflect on the status quo and make changes for the better, it is insufficient to satisfy immediate practical needs. Another challenge there is facing teachers of CBI is to avoid imposing certain perspectives. It is important for teachers to create a safe space, both physically and mentally, in which students can openly express their own views and learn to be global ethical. So I know there are a lot of challenges when we try to implement the future trends of CBI, but I'm just going to stop here for now. Now, let's move on to the trends, the future trends. As with the passage of time and advancement in the classroom technologies, I must say technology really plays a big role in the future of CBI. But we have more than that. So the first one here is the custom learning experiences. So according to McLaughlin, most professions treat each individual's case differently. Each patient of a doctor has individualized treatment plans. Education should be no different. So as a result, teachers will have individualized learning plans for students, which will enable each student to learn at a pace that best suits their abilities and to engage with content that is most beneficial to them. Because learning methodologies and experiences should never be the same for everyone. Next is emerging technology. So technology itself is nothing new. We've been dealing with an influx of new edtech for years now. However, especially this 2020, this technology will be getting even more advanced. So the goal here is to facilitate more innovative teaching methods while enabling more engaging learning opportunities. But there's a catch. We might be using them incorrectly. But, on the other hand, if you use them correctly, the opportunity here is huge. We have an access to cutting-edge learning experiences without ever leaving our hometowns or even our bedrooms. You know, like learning about ancient Rome with a realistic simulation of the Colosseum. It's like that. So it also includes the virtual learning experiences that we'll have, virtual meetings, virtual classes, virtual group sessions and presentations, and so on. Third is the student-centered learning. So this idea of student-led learning centers is based on a simple concept. They said passion drives motivation. So when teachers, or the future teachers, which is us, when we tap into students' interest, it becomes much easier to build skills and knowledge. So imagine being in your computer the whole day, researching, making analysis, and so on. When you really think of it, it can be tiring for some students because they might not have the motivation to do so, right? But again, going back, we have to tap to their interest. So we have to build lessons based on students' interests and their personal learning goals. If we work with them, at least theoretically, we create more active and dedicated learners. Anytime, anywhere. The name alone, we can basically learn anywhere and anytime. May as it be your hometown, or in another place which is convenient for you, or in a place which gives you motivation, such as the mountains perhaps, or the beach. As long as it gives you a flexible time, and as long as you finish everything, I think we're all good on that. So, to conclude everything, student engagement is the name of the game, and educators will continue to find new ways to customize the learning experience for each student. Technology will play a big role in this continued shift. As the instruments we use advance, our approach to education will evolve into a more data-driven process. This isn't to say education will become more robotic, rather than teachers will be able to build their lesson plans around real-time insights into their students' needs.
Thank you for learning with us. Bye-bye!